So as everyone may have figured out, I use Clip Studio Paint as my art program of choice. I mean, it's Clip Studio Paint. It's goated like that. But also, I spent a lot of money to get this program. So bet that I will get a return on that investment. However, I didn't always have Clip Studio Paint. A long time ago, when I wanted to draw on the computer, I used FireAlpaca because it was free. I used it for a while, but after getting Clip Studio Paint, I stopped using it entirely. It's been like 3-ish years, so I thought it'd be fun to try drawing in FireAlpaca again after all of that time and yeah, so let's talk about it. I did get pretty distracted during the speed paint, so you will see a lot of long pauses in the footage. Anyways, I decided to draw Durin for this because why not? I think it's fun to draw characters from games you like every now and then. I draw my muses all the time anyways. So one of the first things I had to deal with was not having my usual brushes. It was fine for the sketching phase because I just need a basic hard brush anyways. Line art and shading is where the brushes really matter, but I'll get into that later. For the most part, the controls were the same, but I noticed a strange thing with my drawing tablet. When I scroll to zoom in using the tablet, I spin the wheel clockwise to zoom in and counterclockwise to zoom out on Clip Studio Paint. In FireAlpaca, it was the opposite. Now, back when I was drawing in FireAlpaca, I had no drawing tablet of my own. I borrowed my brother's. His tablet isn't one of those screen ones. Mine does have a screen so I can draw directly on, so it felt slightly different drawing in FireAlpaca this time around for me. Durin was pretty difficult for me to draw. First, I struggled on his hair because it didn't look right in my style. Then his clothes. They're detailed. I mean, it's a Genshin character design, of course, but man, I seriously had a bad time with them. What made it worse is that I didn't have the liquify tool. I'm sure the newest version of FireAlpaca probably has a liquify tool and gradient maps, but I haven't updated my FireAlpaca in years. I'm pretty sure my version of FireAlpaca is 1.9.1, which is very old. I could have updated FireAlpaca for this video, but I decided to not do that just because I'm lazy. But also, I think it brings a bit of a challenge for myself. I relied heavily on the liquify tool to correct any mistakes, like make tiny adjustments and whatnot. Without it, I had to kinda just erase and redraw things. It definitely screwed me up on the hair because that's where I feel like I use the liquify tool the most. I just hope the proportions on the hair doesn't look that chopped, but we'll see. In the speed paint now, I'm doing the line art. Now, the default hard brush works fine for me for the line art since I feel like I do pretty clean lines anyways. But I noticed my lines were a lot shakier. I was like, huh? Kept trying to keep my hand still until I realized at the last second that my global stabilizer was set to 2. I switched it up to 10 and my lines looked better, but like 85% of the line art was just with the stabilizer being at 2. I don't remember if I ever adjusted the stabilizer for my Clip Studio Paint at all. I'm sure I did, like maybe it was in the brush settings or something. But yeah, I didn't do any of that in FireAlpaca until the end, so if the lines look wonky, that's your explanation. This step did go on as normal though, even with the extra details Durin's design has. I swear, when we have extra details, everything else gets like 10 times more painful for me. But hey, the details do make everything look more satisfying in the end. Flat coloring went on as normal except for a few minor things. There was no lasso fill bucket tool in this version of FireAlpaca. The lasso fill bucket tool is probably up there in favorite things to use. Liquify is at the top. But that tool thing is so useful for when I need to fill out the little crevices that the fill bucket can't reach. I had a lot of little unfilled crevices that I just didn't fill in until the end because no lasso fill bucket tool. You also may have noticed that I don't have my usual palette in FireAlpaca, so that meant I had to go directly to the color wheel and that was pain. Mostly for the shading though, because I use different shading colors for different things, and having to get the shading color I need back required extra steps. It wasn't an entirely art program breaking thing though, just extra steps that are annoying that I didn't have to worry about in Clip Studio Paint. But again, my Clip Studio Paint kinda just has all of my usual settings, while FireAlpaca was essentially empty. I never had a proper palette in FireAlpaca even while I was drawing because I didn't care. Well, years later, I care. So yeah. Shading was a bit rough because I had my shading brush I love in Clip Studio Paint. Well, it's not here in FireAlpaca. I used the watercolor brush for shading, but it looked off. It was a little too soft. Then I realized I could get rid of the softness and then boom, shading brush is half back. But just like with the line art, I didn't notice it until the end. that was really it with the shading. Rendering is where it got interesting because I didn't have the add layer from visible command. So it meant I had to just manually duplicate and merge things so I can do my usual rendering techniques. It wasn't program breaking, but it was definitely extra steps. But at the end of it all, I pretty much survived and made a hopefully decent piece. And here is the final illustration. It turned out better looking than I expected. I mean, then again, the only difficulties were just petty things. Obviously, it doesn't matter what drawing program you use though. If you have the skills, you can make even MS Paint work. I'm not one of those people with mad skills, but I guess we can try our best. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Sorry that it's a short one this week. On the week of recording and editing this, I had very important life stuff to tend to, but also I was trying to do other content creation stuff. It's summer for me now, which means I can do a lot more. I'll get back to doing things that are more fun, hopefully. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more from me, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Maybe I'll see everyone in the next one. Until then, bye!